Hello again, everyone. This is Paul. Welcome to my next video, my Myers-Brigg playlist. Today I'm going to talk about a subject that I used to think I knew really well, but then turned out I didn't know so much. So I did a bit more research, and based on firsthand experience, I think I have enough to go by. And today I'm going to talk about the ESTJ, Myers-Brigg type, often known as the guardians on some pages. They're the types that are uber obsessed with tradition, and they're always the ones that they know the rules by heart, and they'll pretty much shove it down your face. Now, unlike my type, the ISTJ, ESTJs are usually more naturally inclined to be leaders, whereas my type is more likely to be a subordinate. Their type is likely to say, do it. My type is likely to say, yes, sir. So, a lot of you probably know ESTJs by a lot of the negative stereotypes online. For instance, ESTJs are known for being incredibly bossy, not exactly too in tune with how people feel because they have inferior introverted feeling. Oftentimes that makes them not attuned to what they are feeling, which is a nice contrast because I, as an ISTJ, know what I'm feeling. I just oftentimes decide to either ignore it or not tell people about it. Whereas ESTJs are often completely unaware of its existence in the first place. They might say something offensive to someone and then not even realize that it's offensive, thinking, what's the big deal? I'm just trying to help you guys out here. And that's the thing about the ESTJs that I really want to zero in this video, is that as harsh as they may sound, they're actually quite the softie on the inside, because once you actually really dig deep and find out how their feeling side ticks, you realize that they're actually extremely caring individuals that want the ultimate good for all of society, which it sounds like an INFJ kind of ideal, but it's true. ESTJs really do want what's best for the society, for the workplace, for their families. They just present it differently. They're not exactly the type that'll be like, hey guys, let's all get along, because that doesn't always work. Instead, their result is more like, okay, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. You do that. You say this. They have such a clear vision in their mind about how things should be that they often are a bit pushy in how they present the idea. So, again, once you figure out that they really do have your best interests at heart, that might, if you're on the receiving end of an ESTJ's forceful approach, it might be a bit easier to take, to remind yourself, okay, they really do care about me deeply. They're just not doing a good job of showing it. I just need to accept that they're not going to be outwardly emotional. They're not going to always reveal what it is they're feeling, unless they're under a lot of stress, in which case, when an ESTJ is under a lot of stress, they tend to do what's called the volcano effect. Scratch that. When an ESTJ is under stress, they tend to do what I call the avalanche effect, which is even worse. The avalanche effect is basically when the ESTJ is so overwhelmed by things not going according to plan and everything being all chaos and disorderly that they will throw things, they'll kick down tables, they'll have tantrums, they'll bellow at the top of their lungs, and they'll act basically like a toddler that doesn't get his way. And that's because when a type is under stress, they tend to swap their functions. So for an ESTJ, they'd all of a sudden be reverting to dominant introverted feeling, and that comes out, like I said, pounding the table, just like, yeah! Like that. Sorry. So, as far as ESTJs that I know personally, I know a shocking few, and a couple of the people that I thought were ESTJ, a few people told me that they might not be. But I do know a lot of ESTJs online, because I used to think I was ESTJ, so I joined the ESTJ page on Facebook, and from what I can tell based on them, I'm not totally sure how they are in person. They seem like they love giving answers. They love knowing that they know that they're right. And also, this kind of shocked me when I heard this, but one ESTJ told me that ESTJs are really, they don't take constructive criticism really well because they're extroverted thinkers. They think, okay, we've got all the answers. We totally have a plan. We got this. We're in charge. And when someone dares to question their authority, it's kind of like if a police officer says you're under arrest and they say, oh, you got to be kidding me, man. You don't know what you're talking about. That's basically how an ESTJ feels when you insult their worth ethic or their authority in the matter. So when an ESTJ is not liked by their peers, as much as they'd like to avoid it, that's one of those things that, like, inwardly they're crying buckets, even though outwardly they appear all tough and stiff and upright. A few examples of ESTJs in popular culture. If you've ever watched the old TV show The Waltons, the grandma is a perfect example of an ESTJ. She has a heart, but work first, then show her heart. If you've played Ace Attorney, Franziska von Karma with her whip and her, like, judge, get to the verdict, now, is another archetypal ESTJ, as well as Maribel in Fire Emblem Awakening. Admittedly a softer ESTJ, but that's not saying much because soft and ESTJ doesn't quite go well unless they're under stress or in love. Speaking of in love, I should say that ESTJs can make some of the best lovers out there from both personal experience and from used to thinking that I was one and making a post about it, and every ESTJ on the page was like, yeah, spot on. Because ESTJs, they have such a strong sense of what is right and what would be the most logical, practical course of action that they apply it to relationships too. If they realize that the most logical course of action is to take the person's feelings into consideration, they'll do it. If it can be communicated to an ESTJ that emotional consideration is the best thing to do for the good of all, they're willing to do it. Now, another thing that sets ESTJs and ISTJs apart is their placement of extroverted intuition. So for me, that's my inferior function. I hate change with a passion. I hate change. I hate moving on. I don't really like innovation that much. ESTJs are kind of okay with innovation. The way I've heard it phrased was, like, we ESTJs are a bit more okay with breaking the rules if that's what it takes. So essentially, ESTJs occasionally adapt the end justifies the means approach, where maybe they do like things concrete and literal, but every now and then they might switch over to that tertiary extroverted intuition as a means of getting to this end that they see so clearly. ISTJs, on the other hand, they are not going to think like that at all. They'll just be like, this is the way it is, set in stone. You better not disobey the rules or else. I mean, ESTJs are kind of like that, but like I said, they'll break it if the occasion allows for it, whereas ISTJs are very stubborn and inflexible in that regard. So the last thing I'm going to say about ESTJs before I get going is that I actually know a Catholic ESTJ, which I know a lot of people think is impossible, because how could that be, Paul? If they're all about logic and practicality, then wouldn't they see the existence of a God, especially Catholic, to be illogical? Well, surprisingly, no. Because they believe that their claim for the basis of God is based on the facts. Like, they can go back through history and documentation and just sheer practicality and figure out for themselves, okay, yeah, God exists. And if they are Catholic, you might want to watch out, because they'll do what's called the cram it down your throat method. Like, okay, God is real, and if you got a problem with that, tough, because God's going to punish you harshly. They probably would have said something even worse than that, but I'm refraining myself for your sakes. But suffice to say, I had a mentor that was ESTJ when I was studying to be a youth minister. And I liked how whenever I would mention an achievement of mine, she would get really surprisingly thoughtful, for lack of a better word. Like, almost motherly, like, oh, wow, that's really good. Good for you. Never overly excited, mind you, but still, she would definitely showcase a look of impression. But on the other hand, the hard part was when she asked me to actually do a meeting when I had barely been prepared for it. And normally, I'd expect when someone says, I don't know, I don't think I can handle this, to be like, oh, it's okay, Paul, we'll find another alternative. For her, I said, I don't know, it doesn't seem like this is up my alley. She was just like, well, guess you're going to have to find another avenue, huh? And then when we met up years later, and I said, hey, sorry I didn't get around to calling you and giving you an update, she's like, yeah? Well, why didn't you call me? Instead of like, oh, no worries. So they may have a hard time with expressing emotions, but that doesn't mean they're not emotional. They especially feel around their family and their loved ones. ESTJs want to provide what's best for the family. They make for incredible breadwinners. Most of America's presidents have been ESTJs, and even though I'm no expert on politics, it does seem like a really good combination, that get it done no matter what it takes approach, when everyone else might be a bunch of softies. And just that willingness to go forward without letting their emotions get in the way. Admittedly, that could go in many disastrous directions, but in and of itself, it seems like a good combination, assuming they're healthy enough to every now and then recenter themselves, realize that they have feelings, and then be willing to embrace it. Because some ESTJs might know that they have feelings, but then they'll say, these are irrelevant. I don't need these. Feelings are stupid. No, feelings are not stupid. They just can't overrun your life. Anyway, due to my lack of not having as many ESTJ friends as I'd like, I'd stop there. So if I've missed anything or if I'm slightly off, please let me know in the comments. I don't pretend to know absolutely everything about these types. And thank you for enjoying my perspectives. And until my next video, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless.